Good afternoon. I'm Connie Book, President at Elon University. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Vice President John Dooley and several other guests for our first ever virtual parent town hall. So it's great for you to join us, and I'm looking forward to a conversation with you all. And thank you. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see an opportunity to offer questions, and we'll do our very best to get to the questions that you have. I'm joined today by a group of great panelists here at Elon. I'll start first with Tony and Michael Brown. They are co-chairs of our Parents Council here at Elon, provide great leadership, and their daughter Rachel is a senior this year. So they've been navigating the senior year and all of the changes. Also with me today is Dr. Paul Miller. Dr. Miller serves as our Assistant Provost for Academic Operations. So he has also been serving on the Emergency Operations Center and now on a task force that is specifically focused on how we will open in the fall 2020. So he's here to help us answer any questions you may have about that. Also, I have Dr. Jean Radigan-Rohr, Vice President for Access and Success here at Elon. Dr. Rohr works closely with our Odyssey scholars and our first-generation students in ensuring that they have meaningful and experience here at Elon, and navigates our work with the Alamance Burlington school system. So she has been significantly busy as we've seen disruption in our local school system, as well as providing support to those Elon students. And also with us is Vice President Greg Zeiser, who leads our admissions and our financial aid operations here at Elon, and has been busy with virtual admissions this spring as we flipped the entire operation to a virtual one, so our incoming class could experience campus to the best of our ability, as well as attend class, and lots of creative work from the admissions team in helping families make that decision about fall enrollment. So glad to have Greg join us as well for your questions. I thought to start us off, I'd give just a brief update on where we are here on campus, very brief, and then open it up for questions. So as many of you know, the coronavirus has created disruption for higher education across the world. Elon is in its 74th day of remote instruction for our students. We quickly were able to switch 1,800 classes to remote instruction. And you think about classes, you might imagine a lecture environment, but truth be told, Elon, because of our small class size, have a dynamic offering of the kinds of classes, labs and studios and performance-based courses. So we have had a lot of creativity over the last 2 months on how to continue learning. And I have been so impressed at the degree progression, the engagement that students are having with our faculty and our staff here who have worked to support students remotely. We also had to reset our budget. So our budget was built on a residential experience for the whole year, and when we left campus in March, that meant that our budget also had to reset in order to provide housing and room and board refunds and credits. And so I worked closely with the community here, putting in budget freezes, reducing spending to essential only. We also frosted all of our hiring. So we've been working really closely with our budget committee and an ad hoc group of our trustees on the fiscal operations of the university, and I'm really pleased with where Elon is in that. So the most significant thing, I think, to parents is the fact that we started a task force focused on how we will arrive here in the fall. And so we look forward to talking about progress that task force is making, as well as our plans for the fall. But right now, we're in the last day of class. Tomorrow is reading day, and students will commence their finals. And for the first time, we'll have a virtual conferral of degrees. Well, it won't be the full-blown graduation ceremony because we're holding on that, looking forward to having that on campus. But we will have a virtual conferral of degrees at the end of next week. And so a busy time of the semester, even remotely, here at Elon. So to start us off on the questions, I thought I would give Tony and Michael the first opportunity to ask questions. They have just done an enormous job as parents, as chairs of our Parents Council, great ambassadors for Elon at every level, and I've been so grateful for their support over the last year in their leadership role in all 4 years of Rachel's education here at Elon.
So good afternoon. Our first question for the panel relates to lessons learned. And we'd like to know, throughout the last few months, what have you learned about Elon and its community?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that in the middle of all of this, Tony, I have had moments where I paused our working group. We would be in the heat of a decision about something, and I'd pause and say, what are we learning about Elon right now? And just spend a little bit of time talking, because it has been so transformative. I'm sure all of our folks are experiencing this in their work as well. You know, it's this transformative learning. We didn't sign up for the course, I often say, but we're learning anyway. And it is important to capture all of these new strengths and understanding about ourselves. So I'll let the other panelists answer that. But John,
I would say too, the other thing for me that I've learned is that the relationships and the resilience that this institution is known for are very real, and they're not just a part of our history. I talked to students, I sent a video to students on the first day of remote instruction in front of the bell, thinking back on the 1923 fire and the impact that happened here. And just to see the ways that students in this present moment have demonstrated their resilience in the face of a challenge that they didn't sign on for, that they didn't expect either. And to see how they relied on each other and their faculty and staff to support them through this time, to know that those relationships were such a part of our experience here has been really heartening.
Yeah, I agree. And parents don't always see that the peer-to-peer. I've been so impressed how students are reaching out to other students, because we get to witness some of that here in our work, and providing real support. I know our career services has been sharing stories of exactly that kind of support, networking, alumni calling in when they have opportunities in their organizations, just all of that support that we really see at the forefront. So, Paul, I'll switch it to you. What's something you're learning?
Well, thanks so much, Connie. I think one of the things that I experienced was firsthand, because I was on the Emergency Operations Center and then now the task force, is how quick our community was to answer the call to engage in collaborative problem solving with a real dedication to figuring out what's best for our community moving forward. In this uncertain time when nobody really has the answers and it's new for everybody.
Yeah, great. Jean, what about you?
So for me, I think I'm going to have to agree with John and the resilience piece. I recall talking to some of our seniors and expressing how sad I felt for all the losses that happened, especially for them as they're graduating. And they were making me feel hopeful. They created this really cool bingo that they were sending to each other virtually, and sent me a copy of it. And it's good. It's really. I was really taken and feeling hopeful at just how resilient these young people are.
So our parents may not realize that bingo is a thing here at Elon. And literally, I called bingo on Elon Day for the group there, and there were over 500 students assembled playing bingo. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, when you're a part of Elon as long as I have been, 30 years now, you know the place pretty well. But then when it comes to sort of a crisis situation, you just are reminded how people come together. What I've loved most about Elon during this time especially is the fact that faculty and staff and current students have just in droves come to us saying, how can we help connect with prospective students? We feel badly that they can't visit. We know that we did when we were looking at Elon, and to have that kind of support has really resulted in a great class coming in. So that's been really gratifying.
Yeah, that's great. Great work. Okay, Michael, I'll flip it to you since Tony asked the other one. What's your question for us?
Well, my next question for the panel is, what has been the biggest challenge you've faced since COVID-19?
Yeah, I think that's we have faced a number of challenges. I'm sure everybody all across the world, but higher education, every sector is unique with its own set of challenges. So I'll go back in reverse and ask that question. So Greg, what's been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced?
Well, obviously, from a professional perspective, this time of year when students are trying to decide on where they'll go to college in the fall, just to put this into perspective, last year during the months of March and April, we had 2,000 accepted seniors visit campus trying to decide if this is where they'll be. This year, we had 39 students visit. So the fact of the matter is that, this is a terrible situation for everyone everywhere. But in this work, it's been fascinating to see that you actually can recruit a class because of this kind of community and the support we get from everyone to make it happen. So recruiting a class for the fall, which is about full and looks really strong, has been certainly one of the greater challenges of my professional career, but also one of the best experiences because of the support.
Very good. Jean, what about you? What's the greatest challenge you've had?
Well, as you know, the area of access work is very communal and very personal. And so I've lost that piece. Also, we work very closely with public schools. And right now, I know from all the families that have reached out to us from our projects, our outreach to the community, that many of our families are struggling, uncertain as to what's going to happen as their children go back to school, especially our families who are unsure or are unable to help their children at home. So that has been very, very difficult for me to think about all the pieces that we're missing right now, and some of which we won't even know until we come back together again.
Yeah. Paul, what about you?
Well, I would say it's planning the steps forward that embrace, the things we do well here, engagement with our peers and our students, supporting deep learning, but knowing that with each step forward, there's uncertainty in the environment that's beyond our control, and trying to balance, I think, the hopes for what the future will look like with the uncertainty of knowing that we don't know 100% what it's going to be. And I'd say that's probably been the toughest thing in my work.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true probably for all of us as leaders at a university, right? That this is a situation that has an unusual set of circumstances around it, and people often look to leaders as people who will help guide the way, who will have some certainty, and this is just not a situation that has a lot of that. So I know I've been talking with students, including with the student government officers last night, about the pathway forward and how important it's going to be for each one of us to lead in our own ways and to work through this as a community. It's going to really require some adaptation and adaptive leadership for us to be able to move forward. And that's hard to do when people are wanting certainty and they want to know what tomorrow is going to look like. And that's just not going to be the situation, at least not for this foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. I agree that around making decisions without a lot of data, right? Mm-hmm. And I tend to be a data-driven decision maker. And so a lot of the challenge is trusting your gut instinct about, the right way forward and getting a lot of good feedback from very talented senior members of the team to help in that decision making. So that probably is the greatest challenge. I think as long as we make values-centered decisions as an institution consistent with our mission, that we land in good stance. So thank you for both of those questions. Those were great ways to get us started today. And now I'd like to, so we have several questions coming in on from the website, so we'll start taking these and then I'll just toss them to everyone on the panel as they pertain to your different areas. So the first question is, how certain are you about students returning to campus for the fall term? So as president, I've made a commitment to be here in the fall. I think I say that with 100% certainty. Now, if something happens that is out of our control, then of course the university will respond. But I think we are developing a very good plan for the fall. It's unfolding now with a task force, but I feel really confident about the fall and our ability to be present as a community here on campus. So, John, why don't you?
Well, I would say also to that, it's that question about certainty again, right? So you plan for what's the most likely scenario, but you have other plans in place for other scenarios that they might unfold. But there's the one that we think is most likely, which is all of us being back on campus in the fall.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the things that are giving us confidence about that we've been tracking Alamance County. We can see coronavirus here. The ability of the community to respond medically is very strong. Our neighbor is LabCorp, so we benefit from quick testing opportunities here. So I think we are in an unusual, every state is different, every community is different, and it happens that our location, our healthcare systems, and all give me great confidence about the fall and our capacity there. Paul, since you're working directly with the Emergency Operations Center and on the task force, what are your thoughts about the fall at Elon?
Well, I'm very optimistic about the fall at Elon, too. Another layer, if I could throw it out there, is that I'm going to be an Elon parent starting in the fall as well. My daughter will be here as a first-year student.
Love that.
So I have a lot of layers of interest here. But I'm very optimistic about that. The task force is a great group and has really been working very hard to ensure that we can have an on-campus experience that does embrace our values. The main overarching goal of the task force is to support to the fullest extent possible Elon's engaged and personal approach to teaching and learning. At the same time, we have to balance that with some flexibility depending on the uncertainty of our situation, and putting into place safety measures to ensure that our community can be as healthy and safe as humanly possible.
Yeah, that's great. We have another question. I'll go to it. What will be the protocol for opening in the fall? Mask, social distancing, tests, tracing, is it all realistic? And so I'll just say that one of the ways in which the task force is working, they've divided into 3 groups, and one of those groups is dedicated just to the health and safety question for students. And that work is unfolding, and every day we're getting updates about capacity. And John, do you want to address that element of it?
Yeah, and I would say that Dr. Archinal, our university physician, and Dr. Janelyn Patterson, who's the Dean of Students, are leading that effort. And you could not have 2 better people to be doing that work. And so each of them actually, in some ways, we've experienced, our experience last fall with the mumps outbreak that took place on campus was really helpful. I didn't imagine we would ever say that it was helpful. But at the time, but it was really helpful for us to be able to think about how we manage our campus environment in a situation where we're talking about infectious diseases, and we have an infectious disease response team that has been developed that was working throughout the course of the fall and managing that and managing it successfully. And so some of those same kinds of things would apply here in terms of testing and contact tracing and isolation. And so we'll be certainly drawing from that experience. This is different, of course, and so just the cultural aspect of wearing a mask around campus and helping students understand, and faculty and staff, what that means, why that's important, how that not only protects you, but really protects others on the campus. And so how do we create that culture in our environment where those kinds of things are going to be a part of our work? Certainly, Dr. Archinal and Dr. Patterson are talking with our local public health officials, the state, as well about just the capacity around testing and contact tracing and what that will look like. And we'll develop those protocols not only through the task force, but over the course of the summer. It's 100 days between now and when the move-in days are scheduled to begin. So we've got some time for those things to
we've
unfold.
seen how much can happen in 100 days,
That's
right?
right. That is exactly right.
I do think it is important that, a lot of times people think about these kinds of plans, emergency plans, as sitting on a shelf collecting dust. But the truth is, because of the mumps, we already went through a semester of contact tracing, a semester of vaccines and immunizations en masse.
That's right.
For parents may not realize, we converted our alumni gym into and worked with the health department to provide vaccinations to thousands and did
right.
that and learned how to do that, and that relationship is fresh.
That's right.
So that's another reason I think we feel really confident about, no matter what the coronavirus protocols will be in 100 days, that we have capacity and relationships to be able to administer the best practices in those.
That's exactly right.
So we have a question. How can parents best support the efforts to keep kids safely on campus? So I will toss that to Jean and her thoughts on parents and the role that parents play in supporting student success.
Oh, hang on, Jean. You're, I think, muted at the current time.
So, Jean, I think you're muted.
There you
Hang
go.
on.
Okay,
There
we
you
go.
Yeah.
So parents, I love parents. Parents are key to everything we do. I do believe that parents, they have more power sometimes than we think we do, and so much more influence with our students than we realize. I think parents can really continually talk to their children about how important it is, not only for their own safety, but for the safety of their friends, to be careful about where they go, what they do, that we know that masks are going to be very, very important. So parents, I'm begging you to talk to your children about the importance of wearing those masks. They're not cool, they're not cute. I don't want to wear them necessarily to hide my gorgeous face, but it's really key that I do it to ensure that we protect not only ourselves but each other. So parents, I'd really love for you to talk to your children about the importance of keeping the entire community safe. Mm-hmm. And if you do it and we do it, they'll hear it from the left, they'll hear it from the right. The hope is that they will continue to work together. It's all of us in this. We're all in this together. You're in this with us. We're in this with them. They're in this with us. We really need you more at this time than ever before. So you are our allies in this, and please, please, please help us.
Yeah, that's great, Jean. I will say that the task force is planning required education of all of our community members, students, faculty, and staff, as to the protocols that we will adopt for the campus in the fall. That communication is going to happen sometime this summer as we refine what those requirements will be. So it really, my hope is that will be a family moment, that parents sit down with their student and say, okay, you're going back in the fall, and here are the rules for how you're going to be healthy and safe. And too, I think to help others, right? Mm-hmm. It's not to help the students realize, and I think we've got really good students in this regard, that this behavior will be for the common good, and to make that the highlight of that conversation about what are you going to do to help others when you get to Elon.
And I think those kinds of conversations are really important, because what you can also do in that moment is help a student and give an example to your own child of, this is how I had an experience in my own life where I had imagined what something was going to be, and it just wasn't the way I thought it was going to be, but it was okay. And I think that that's going to be true for all of us, especially for the new students coming in the fall who've sort of imagined what that moment of college is going to look like. Maybe have seen it in movies and other kinds of things. And this may not be what they had imagined it to be, but it doesn't mean that it won't be good. It doesn't mean that we won't have a community coming together in really incredible ways. So, that conversation of expectation setting, I think, is helpful too.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Well, Tony and Michael, as parents, is there any thoughts you have about how parents could play a role in this for students' return in the fall?
Yes, I think I agree with everything that's been said already in terms of having the conversation with the students, helping them understand that while it might not be cool to have your mask on, it is really important to wear the mask, because if you want to continue to be on campus for the entire year, then everybody has to act responsibly. And it starts with them as individuals, and we have to work collectively. But I also think just awareness and just making sure that they understand the seriousness of what is going on, and that they don't start letting their guards down. And for instance, when our daughter is now back on campus gathering her things from her apartment, we were careful to tell her, be mindful of the need to still be vigilant, to continue to wear your mask, to continue to wear your rubber gloves, to sanitize things. Don't let your guard down. It's really important for you to act responsibly for yourself and also for those other students and individuals on the campus. So I think it's just a matter of communication and making sure that the students understand that this is very serious, even though they're in college and they want to have a good time and experience the full experience. They do need to understand the importance of the actions that they're being expected to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. In truth be told, we're not operating at 100%, but we're operating probably at 20%, mm-hmm. And we've been fortunate not to have any infections of the coronavirus, and we're the only college in this area that has not had it. And I have to say, I think it's because of students and faculty and staff taking precautions, and that our campus was already staged with good sanitary. Because of the mumps, we had gone through and reset the campus for good conditions.
And I think we do try to send the same kinds of communications that we send to students. We send those to parents, and that's really to Tony's point about being able to reinforce those messages that the university is sending and have those come not just from us, but from parents as well. So We'll continue to send those messages so that parents know what we're saying to students about those kinds of situations.
That's great. It takes a group effort, so that's good. So I want to answer some questions that have come in. One of the questions is about our classes. Are different classes being addressed differently? For example, studio classes in dance and theater and science labs when considering in-person and online options. So I will just say that one of the charges I gave the task force was that they imagine a world where every class could be entered virtually at any time throughout the semester. And the reason that that's important is because we imagine that people will get sick, or people in their families might get sick. And so we need the ability for people to isolate and then come back into class when they're healthy. And while they're in isolation, I don't want them to miss the class. And that may be true for a faculty member teaching the class. They may need to come in virtually for 2 weeks. And so one of the tenets of the task force planning is that the residential experience, that students and faculty and staff would be able to come in and out of that experience virtually throughout the semester. So I will turn it over to Paul for a more specific answer about the classes that are studio-based or lab-based. Are there conversations about those classes particularly?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. We actually have a subgroup of a working group of the task force that is on instruction in the classroom, the lab, and the studio. And there's a variety of people who are participating either as a member of the working group or as a consultant to the working group, representing all of our disciplines on campus. I became aware of a phrase I've never heard before from a dance professor, of bodily spray. okay, because of the kind of work that they do in a dance studio. The movement, it's very physical, and they're in close proximity to one another. And so we're working with experts in those areas, as well as in science laboratories and computer science laboratories, engineering spaces, et cetera, to interact with us so that we know what are the special needs of those groups so that they can have their learning experiences and be safe while they do their learning experiences. So absolutely, those discussions are really important and they're underway.
Yeah, great. I know that I'm going to go to the next question, is that many of you are concerned about financial aid, and we have a couple of questions about financial aid. And so this coronavirus has certainly created financial disruption for families, and so I want to just turn it over to Greg, who supervises financial aid, to talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing to help families at this time and students at this time.
Sure. Thank you, President Book. Yeah, we, as you can imagine, demand for financial aid is at an all-time high, appropriately so, given all the uncertainties that everybody is facing. Frankly, we are doing, as President Book said earlier in this conversation, that we're sort of reevaluating the budget. We are putting as much financial aid into the revised budget as we possibly can, recognizing that there will be more requests. There are more requests from incoming students, more requests from currently enrolled students. So my best advice is we want to do what we can to the extent we are able. So contacting the financial aid office is probably your best bet. I will say, too, that I want to make sure that everyone knows that obviously you're familiar with the CARES Act, and those funds are being dispersed effective this morning. There's some communication that went to eligible students so that they can essentially apply or seek funding that is available to them via the CARES Act in light of the coronavirus pandemic. So I think, fundamentally on campus, what we're doing is we are channeling as much financial aid resources into the budget as we are able. And then, of course, the National CARES Act is going to impact a good number of students as well, I think in a very positive way.
Thanks, Greg. I know, John, we also have several efforts in your area with the chaplain.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about other financial aid?
We have long had a chaplain's discretionary fund, and this is funds that are available to the chaplain to support acute financial needs from students, but also from staff and faculty as well. And so the chaplain's office has already been working with students who have unique circumstances coming out of this situation, and will continue to do so. And some of the CARES Act funds have been set aside for the chaplains to support the work that the chaplains will do to support students at this time. So lots of communication coming out really today in many ways around the CARES Act, but the Chaplains Fund has already been working to support students.
That's great. And we did have several donors come forward to help support our students, so I've been grateful for that. The CARES federal funding is about $1.5 million to distribute to our students with need. So that's commenced today. So we're pleased to be able to do that for students who are faced with financial difficulty. And also in next year's budget, we're creating a loan fund. It's the first time we've done that, and we're setting aside if families and students have need. It's really critical, I know, for your student to be able to continue to progress to graduation. That is the thing that we do, and so we want to make sure that we provide resources to help bridge what could be an economically challenging time for our students. So I'm pleased to be able to answer that question. We have another question or just a very practical question. What happens if we go back in the fall and a student in a residence hall contracts the virus? And I know it says if a student gets the virus, but I think we all need to just say when a student gets coronavirus, because it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So what are our plans?
It may be a student in a residence hall, it might be a student off campus, it might be a faculty or staff member too, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's lots of different scenarios that we will need to work through. And And again, I would say we will go back to, and the task force is looking at what the testing protocols and contact tracing and how that will work, isolation. As we think about the residence halls in the fall, we are setting aside a number of rooms on campus that would be available to us should we need to have a student be isolated for some period of time. We already have programs in place where we help those students with meals. And again, you talked about the things to make sure they can continue in their classes. So we'll look at all of those kinds of scenarios. We're also thinking about how to prepare for those things in advance, to prevent those kinds of situations. So a lot of the work that we did, as you referenced this past fall around the mumps, was about how we think about cleaning and how we think about expectations and community and what the expectations are within. And we have different types of communities in the different residence halls. So that will be an important part of our work, is just looking at the way we clean, the way we have students interact with each other. We do benefit here from Elon in the fact that we have very small residential facilities. So we don't have more than 125 students in any one building. And so those small buildings mean that those are sort of communities that are closer together. There are fewer students coming in and out of common entrances. And so we certainly take advantage of the fact that we have, from an architecture perspective, some nice facilities for students to be able to stay healthy and safe.
Yeah, that's great. I know also that Harvest Table, our food provider here on campus, has created a touch-free food service model. Can you talk a little bit about what you imagine dining halls to look like?
Yeah, it's going to be different, right? And it's already been different. You referenced that we've already had a number of students who've been on campus who weren't able to leave. And so actually our dining service has been serving students since the beginning of this virus and has been learning and adapting along the way. We have great partners in Harvest Table that run our Elon dining operation. So they're looking at different strategies for how the residence hall and off-campus dining spaces will be set up, what that will look like, how you get food. Right now, they're doing to-go only options for us for the spring and the summer, and that will certainly adapt and change as we move to fall. So.
Yeah, so food is really important on a college campus. So we're all talking about, the food environment. So we have a question about the plans for the class of 2020 graduation. So I know, Dr. Dooley, you've been working on that. I think, Paul, you've also been part of those conversations. So why don't you give us just an overview of kind of what we're thinking for the graduation?
Well, you've referenced already the degree conferral that will happen next week. So the diplomas that students will receive will have a May graduation date listed on them. And so we will be conferring degrees next week through a virtual ceremony that I think we're all looking forward to. But for many students, that degree is important, but also the social experience of commencement. And so we have pledged to students that when we're able to, we'll have a commencement ceremony that'll happen on campus. We're looking at ways for how we might do that for students who couldn't return to the campus to be able to be engaged and connected to whatever the ceremony will be. But we imagine the whole, and the students have been really vocal with us about what some of their expectations are around their ability to come together as a class, to be together again, some of the rituals that we have around the senior ball and baccalaureate and commencement will all be a part of that ceremony as well. We've also talked about how do we do some new traditions. So I referenced the fire in 1923. The first time we ever had a graduation under the Oaks was a response to that 1923 fire when the place where they normally would have held graduation burned. And so out of that innovation came this wonderful tradition. And so we've given some thought with our students and our Traditions Council to what a new tradition might be for those students when we get together for commencement, whenever that may be. I know everyone wants to know what the date is going to be, but we really need to let the guidance around hosting events and hosting that type of an event here in the state sort of dictate that. So it'll be a little bit of time before we'll have clear information about this.
I know we're thinking a lot about the seniors, and this really is a unique moment, right, for seniors in high school and seniors in college about the rite of passage of graduation. And
that's right.
And so there's a little present coming for the seniors in the mail, and so I just say for parents to watch out for that because we're sending them a little something fun in the mail. But Paul, what you want to add to the graduation plans?
Well, sure. I agree that the conferral ceremony that will be happening shortly on the 22nd will be great. So I definitely would encourage everybody to tune into that. But I think it also, the future event in the fall or when the time presents itself is also a really great place for students to be able to honor their relationships with one another and the faculty and staff that have been a big part of their life over the last 4 years or so. We unfortunately the circumstances this semester, kind of ended our face-to-face interactions rather abruptly, And so this is a nice time for people to come together, celebrate one another, celebrate their accomplishments, but also kind of, I don't know, give that sign off to we're moving on to our next thing, but, we'll still be part of each other's lives, but it's going to be different. And that'll be important.
I agree, Paul. And I do think that face-to-face ceremony is really important closure for our seniors, and I can imagine it will be an emotional event when it happens. I have been reluctant to say a date for that because in North Carolina, the governor is reopening the state in 3 phases. We're in phase 1 right now, which allows 10 or more to gather. And I anticipate phase 2 will be in just a couple of weeks. They've modeled May 26th as that date. I imagine we're going to get a new number of the size of gathering we can have. But until we're confident that we can have a gathering of 10,000 people, which is our typical, I think it's even a little more than that, our typical graduation ceremony crowd. I'm hesitant to put a date out there and then have to change it. I think we've had enough of cancellations and changes, so we're just going to wait and see what the governor says about phase 3 and do that. But we'll give families plenty of time to mark their calendars, and it'll be a date where everybody can be healthy and safe in that celebration. So I'm going back to the questions here. What do you think is the likelihood of D1 sports resuming in the fall?
And there it is, right?
Yeah.
Baseball just announced a possible schedule to start after July. So it's a question that many people have on their minds.
So, Greg, are you getting families asking this about athletics and the admissions? Because, athletics is a big part of our community gathering here.
We are. Obviously, that's why a lot of students choose a school like Elon, because we offer a lot of things, including D1 sports. So that's a big piece of who we are. And obviously, we're mindful of just, what time will tell us. We talk a lot about social distancing. But absolutely, that's one of the big things that students who are in the class of 2024 are excited about.
Yeah. So we have been, in theory, waiting for really the conference and the NCAA to make that announcement. And I think the NCAA said this weekend they're waiting for colleges to so there's a little ambiguity. I anticipate by the end of June we'll have a clear understanding. And the majority of colleges in the country are saying they will be open this fall. So I think there's a safe way that you can have athletics, and I'm confident that the NCAA will figure that out, and the conferences will follow suit.
And I think that this is in the setup. There are so many of the kinds of questions we're getting and that we have where if we can just find a way to live with a little ambiguity now and a little uncertainty, down the road we'll be able to make an even better decision about what those things will look like and what those will be. And so I know we want answers today. We want to know. We want to have certainty, but that may not be possible. And so, can we live with waiting just a little bit more to know?
That's a great point, John. And too, the ambiguity, sometimes the outcome will be better if we wait with a little ambiguity. We'll get a better result at the end of that. I know there's a lot of conversation about social life in the fall and what that might look like. And we had questions from parents about, what could possibly be the social life. I know, Jean, you work closely with students. What are their thoughts about resuming social interactions?
So that's a tough one because students like to be with each other. It's part of what we do on college campuses so well is developing young people and that whole social space. So of course, students are going to want to be reached. When I talk to our students, it's a place we struggle, which is why the pieces that we put in place, the whole business about the wearing the mask and the social distance, we're calling it physical distancing, simply because we want them to continue to be social. So one of the pieces that we're looking at is trying to talk to young people about how can you be innovative in this space? What different kinds of things might we be able to do? Might we be outdoors more, right? in big, wide open spaces. And so I'm looking forward to some of the really unique, and the good thing about our young people is that they can really think of creatively sometimes of things that we don't even think about, of what they might come up with. I think we're going to see a lot of outdoor kinds of activities when we can do that, more so than being indoors the way we usually are. But I am hopeful that we are going to land in a good space. Communication is going to be really key, and working together toward this effort of health and safety. We can't say that enough. But the social piece is important, and we can't close our eyes to the fact that they are going to want to be with each other. It's part of what we do, as I said before. Well, the key now is how can we do that in the safest way?
Well, Dr. Dooley and I had a conversation with fraternity and sorority life leaders last week. And you want to share a little bit about how they're thinking about their organization?
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that there are a lot of aspects to our social fabric of our community that are also intimate and they're connected, right? And so even within fraternities and sororities, we think of them sometimes for large events or larger organizations, but really it's about the relationships they have within their organizations. So, they've already been working, obviously, in a virtual. If you watch, you can see online some of the groups that have been meeting virtually already, right? And so some of those things may continue to exist, but also the mentoring connections, the smaller connections and relationships that will exist between those groups. Many of the fraternities and sororities are already getting guidance from their national offices about how they'll do events differently. And again, some of this is about the social experience, but some of it's about the experience of being together. And so we can also be together doing service in Alamance County. We can be together in smaller group settings and not just in bigger group environments. And so I think that for all of our organizations, there'll be lots of changes. The one group that's probably not going to change anything is the esports club. So they are built for this moment, and they have been pretty active this spring with the electronic gaming competitions and those kinds of things. But for many of our groups, it will be different. And we are already thinking for our folks in student involvement about joining organizations and what that will look like and how students get connected to each other, to their neighborhoods, to organizations and groups.
And truth is, Elon is a small college.
That's right.
So we're not struggling with the 50,000 student issues. Already our classes, the largest is 33, the smallest is 2. And so we already, some of this physical distancing is built into our design. And so we were talking about Elon 101 the other day, and just, that's a powerful community of 20 people that get together and get launched into the Elon system. So those relationships and how we have it designed don't have the challenges of the big school.
That's right.
I also think the LLCs and the neighborhoods, the way they're organized, create the space to have those social interactions without the huge groups having to get together.
Yeah.
I think this is a good thing that we have those LLCs and or neighborhood designs.
Yeah. Those are living, learning communities, and they're really successful here at Elon.
Yep, about 25 of them were actually nationally recognized for the work we do with those learning communities. And students are actually already signing up, or incoming students are already signing up for housing, and that's one of the options that many are choosing.
Yeah, that's great.
I would just add, too, that I was showing a family around recently and of an incoming student, and they commented, the campus is, so large. We have over 600 acres. So, 6,200 undergraduates, 7,000 students, but over 600 acres. So we have the physical space, too, to really be able to take advantage of the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're not in we're in a suburban area, not in the middle of a large congested area. So the design itself of the campus infrastructure supports good distancing capacity for our families. What have you been, Tony and Michael, what have you been telling Rachel about gathering with friends?
Well, as my wife spoke about social distancing and again, physical distancing rather than social, we're in New Jersey, so we've been hit very hard by the COVID-19. And again, we've told her she's just got to be smart. It's nothing to play with. You don't want to be paranoid. We've told her to be vigilant on what she knows, what she's been taught about this disease, this virus. So hopefully the students, again, will be smart about it and realize that it's going to be here probably for a little while. So let's work around it, and I'm sure they'll rise to the challenge.
And I'll add to that, if I may. When she was home, we saw that she and her friends are very creative. They were very creative in the way that they used to stay connected with each other. So, of course, they texted as they usually do. But what we were pleased with is we would go by her room, and she was frequently in there on the telephone, actually talking, doing something that this generation does not do. They were doing virtual Netflix movie watching activities, and they were putting notes in the chat box. Video conferencing has become big for them, and virtual coffee. She was having virtual coffee dates with her friends. So they're creative, and they found ways to stay connected while they were away from campus, and we expect that they will continue to be very creative when they get back on campus.
Yeah, that's great.
I also think a lot of this virtual connection is not going to go away even when they're on campus. We see them doing it on their cell phones, and I think they'll continue a great deal of that even after they come back.
It's funny because my son graduated from Elon in 2017, and he lives in Atlanta now. And he was always, he would rather text me than talk to me on the phone. And we had a Zoom for Mother's Day, and he was like, "Mom, I really like this talking thing. I've learned how to," and it just made me realize, it's like one of the gifts of the coronavirus is that, that we are learning about the power of relationships in a whole new way. And I anticipate a lot of renewal in relationships as an outcome of what we are going through. We have a question on about study abroad for the fall. And we do know that study abroad has been impacted, and the question is about housing options for students who've decided that they'd rather be on campus in the fall and travel and study abroad in the spring, so flipping the semester. So I know, Paul, this is something you've been working closely with in academic operations. And then John on the housing side. Can you just tell a little bit about the preparations on the academic side that we've made for the students who choose to stay this fall versus study abroad?
Sure. Well, from a course schedule standpoint, the Global Education Center, ahead of registration, reached out to all the students that were scheduled to study abroad in the fall and encouraged them to register for courses on campus. In addition to holding on to their fall study away plans. Just in the event that they change their mind or their programs are canceled, that way they'll have a schedule in place should they be on campus. The majority of students did that, and I think it served them quite well. Students that didn't do that, and if they're still concerned, should reach out to their academic advisors. The system is still open. They can register for classes because we wanted to make sure that students had a schedule. One, the other is that we wanted to be able to plan for this. And knowing in advance what that might look like has helped us also in providing curricular options that they can register for.
Yeah, great. And what about housing?
Yeah, I would say that our Office of Residence Life, in addition to managing the on-campus housing, also has a lot of relationships with off-campus landlords and apartment complexes and such. And so it actually regularly maintains a list of off-campus properties that still have vacancies. Right now we're planning that many of the study abroad programs will happen in the fall, but for those students who are saying that they're not sure that they want to, we're working with them to help them as they find housing. There's a lot of that happens informally. If you go on the Class of 2022 Facebook page, you'll see a lot of, hey, I've got a space, I'm looking for a sublet, and those kinds of things. But Residence Life will also work with students and support them. And we'll continue to look at that over the summer and support students in helping them find housing nearby the campus.
Yeah, great. We have a question about the Elon Career Center. So what access will the 2020 graduates have to the Elon Career Center, and for how long? and I'll just briefly answer that one, is that they have it for the rest of their life. That our career services, called the Student Professional Development Center here at Elon, not only works with currently enrolled students, but work regularly with alumni. And so as they become alumni, the stages of their career changes and their needs change. And so the career services works with them to help them navigate that. And of course, we're in an unprecedented time here with the volatility of the job offers that students had. You know, one of the things I've really felt for our seniors is we were in one of the nation's best hiring environments in history. I think it was in the last 50 years. And so they went from all great moment to whoosh. It is good. Our career services offices has heard that offers are continuing, but that they're delayed. So if they had a contract that was starting in June, that now they're starting in August and some October. So we've been pleased to hear that the offers are holding, but there will be disruption, and there is disruption. So the Student Professional Development Center and that staff is working with students, and so that is all being handled virtually right now. So I encourage the students to engage and set up an appointment if they need support.
And we've certainly gotten a lot of questions, not just about graduates looking for jobs for the future, but also about internships and other kinds of experiences. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what the Student Professional Development Center and Advancement have been doing to reach out to parents and alumni and others about hosting internships. And
yeah, that's great. We have put out a call, and many of you parents responded, our alumni responded, which has led to a number of opportunities for employment and internships. The deans, I know, Paul, have been working on this because internships are required for most of our majors. And so this has meant some adjustment this summer in the internship realm. Do you want to offer a couple observations about that, Paul?
Sure. So yeah, that's exactly right. We've been working to conceptualize what those internships might actually look like, utilizing some virtual working options. So suggesting projects that students can take to the internship site, projects that they can work on virtually, and supporting that on the back end with, on our end rather, with helping students to reach out and do some kind of career interviewing, right? Part of the goals of internships is what would it be if I were to pursue a career in that industry? So to reach out to industry leaders and to do some virtual interviewing and some research on the roles that those industries play in society. So really trying to support the career exploration process, both from an internal kind of academic standpoint, but also to bridge the divide here using some technologies and things that students can do virtually to support their learning.
And I know that a college is like a little town in many ways, and so I know that the deans have gotten creative about internships here at Elon as well. So the dean of the School of Business, Raghu Tadapelli, was telling me that, you know, if you can't be on site at an internship and you can't do a virtual, then they'll also have some options for on-campus internships. We run a finance office, we have an accounting office, and so working to leverage ourselves during this time if students aren't able to have that preferred external internship.
We've also worked with our Experiential Education Advisory Committee from the curricular perspective to adjust, to not change the curriculum, but reconceptualize how we approach those so that students can also meet their graduation requirements in our current context.
Yeah, thank you for that, because degree progression is really important, and Elon has a commitment to that 4-year degree as a value to the investment that you're all making in a private education. That's why the supports from the Student Professional Development Center, as well as that graduation on time in 4 years, is so critical, so that the value of that Elon education is realized for families. So there's a question about J-term and travel programs to Europe, and our current thinking on whether they will take place. So I will say we have the leading study abroad office in the nation. So that's one really good thing and a feather in our cap. And we were one of the first schools to decide to leave Italy, Florence, our program there when the coronavirus first appeared, and we were able to make that informed call because of the leadership in our Global Education Center, not just in managing the programs, but fully understanding what the environment looked like on the ground should a student become ill. And it didn't take us long to realize that the Italian healthcare system would be soon overwhelmed if the virus spread as projected. And the last thing we wanted were our students in Florence without the benefit of good health care. So that helped us make that decision early to move out of Florence. And in hindsight, so grateful that we did that. But Paul, have you been talking about J-term?
Yeah, we sure have. Woody Pelton, who's our Dean of Global Education, also sits on the Emergency Operations Center. He reports out every day. So right now, our January term, we have more than 650 students who are intending to study abroad during January term in any variety of places. And the Global Education Center expects those programs to be a go. Of course, we're keeping an eye on things, and we've been out ahead of that throughout this pandemic. And I expect that we'll do the same thing with trying to communicate as early as humanly possible should there be a change. But right now, we expect those to be a go.
And that's great because we know how powerful and transformative those study abroad experiences are to the students' education. And pleased to see things begin, the wheels start to begin to move those forward again.
And it's important to remember that those experiences happen all over the world, right? So some of the decisions we make might not be for the entire program, but might be program specific depending on a particular region or location where students are traveling. So
yeah, great observation.
And in those cases, they're short. they're 3 weeks, so it'll be a little bit different experience in decision making for those versus a semester-long abroad program.
Yeah. Great. So, Greg, I have this one very quick question because I know you'll want to answer it. Are accepted freshman students able to set up campus visits now?
I love that question, and the answer is absolutely.
Say that again?
Yeah, it's quick. And we have started to receive inquiries about that. So we have been setting up private campus visits for families who can register via the website. For one-on-one kind of experiences through the month of May. And then we expect to launch a more traditional version of Campus Visit come early June, which will be, of course, within the guidelines that the state is requiring of us. But the short answer is yes, we'd love that. And if you find, because a lot of people are signing up for visits, if you find that there's a slot that's full because they're private and just one family at a time, let us know via the admissions@elon.edu account, and we will do our best to accommodate your travel schedule because we'd love to have you here.
That's great. Thank you. So our time has come to an end, but I would like to offer the Browns the final question of the hour. So I'll turn.
Our final question would be, how is it that Elon, how can we help support the efforts of leadership in these difficult times? You're doing a lot. You've shared a lot with us. We have utmost confidence in the leadership of the university. But what is there specifically that we can do to support you?
Well, that's great. John,
Yeah.
I'll toss that one to you.
I would say, first and foremost, today's the last day of class, and it's reading day and final exams. And so I think first, it's the task right in front of us, the final exams and supporting students in their exams and final papers and projects that are going to all be coming due in the next week. And so, we've got to work with that ahead of us. And then to stay in touch with us over the course of the summer and let us know how we can help and work with you as we transition back in the fall.
Yeah, I like that reminder of first things first, right? Mm-hmm. And first things first is to finish this semester strong. And then we'll have the summer to deepen that plan for the opening of fall. It will be a dynamic time. So one thing I'm really proud about Elon is that we're nimble and responsive. I think that's a strength of our planning that we do here at Elon. I have been telling when folks say to me, I wish we could go back to normal. I say, no, we're not going back to normal. We're going forward to new. And it will be new at Elon this fall. But it will still have the Elon values and the Elon mission. And we're learning every day from coronavirus about what that new will look like. But I know Elon and I know our community. It's steadfast, it's steady, and I'm proud of it. So I know that we will arrive in the fall in good stead and well planned. So thank you very much for being part of this first virtual town hall. We couldn't have done it without you, so we're grateful that you joined us. Thank you to all of our panelists who took time, took their lunch hours to be with us today, so I'm very appreciative of that and for all your great feedback that you provided. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.